share my screen. One thing that today we're going to be really spending quite a bit of time talking about regular expressions, which is regular expression is a specific type of language that we use to do things with text. Okay, but before we do, I wanted to retouch on something from yesterday that is, I think, really important, especially in the context of Leah or perhaps some of the stuff that Andrew's going to be working on, which is why would we want to capture an event on a parent element? So where did we have yesterday? It was right here, right? Well, let's open our other project, the one that was the paper rock scissors one. Week 5, is it here? It doesn't. So if I run this, pull this over, okay? So right, we have our we have our buttons. We click on them. It's doing things in here, saying scissors. It's telling us if we win or not. Right, tie game. The reason why we would maybe not want to attach an element, or attach an event directly on the specific object, right? Because down here, I think yesterday, we did it on the game controls thing, which is the div that contains all of those buttons. The reason that we would not want to do it on the individual elements is if we were creating new elements, right? So just to give you a quick example, let's come in here and change this the other way, right? And we'll do document.get element by ID. What do we call these? Paper, rock, scissors. Paper. And we'll do this. We'll just copy this 3 times, right? So this is, one of the ways, we've seen it in your code, right? So paper, rock, scissors. And so clicking these works perfectly, just like we'd expect. But the reason we changed this to do this on the parent container is that it gives us flexibility as we're doing things dynamically. So the best example to this is Leah's, right? If she wanted to attach some event that would happen when you clicked on a card, those card elements are being dynamically created. And so the problem would be if we didn't have Lizard Spock in here, right? But we wanted to come in here and say, maybe something like document.create element, we say button, right? Bar button equals this, okay? And then if we went in and said document.get element by ID game controls dot inner HTML pen child, maybe? Yeah, let's do that one. Button. Let's make sure that the button dot inner text equals lizard, right? So we want to make it so that every time this page loads, we're going to load a, did I take it out? Yeah. So we've loaded this magical button down here, right? This magical button, if we're attaching the events directly to the elements, directly to the buttons, we'll never have this option. But what we really want to do is, we probably also need to add a class name, right? So button.class name equals, what do we do? Game option. Now let's give it an ID of button.id equals lizard, right? If we save this. So we've just dynamically inserted this button down here, and it does not have any click event added to it. If we wanted to have it so that our game, as we're adding new elements like drawing cards, if we capture the event not on the individual elements but on the parent container, like we did last night, why we set this up, now any button that we add to this mechanism will automatically get, yes, scissors beats lizard, right? Because we haven't added the logic for what to do with those. But any of those buttons, assuming that we're putting in the correct class name or the ID or whatever it is that we're checking that event against, we can have 1,000 buttons in here, and our single event listener function will operate on it. So as we're doing things dynamically, you want to, we could have also come through here just as easily and said, button dot add event listener, click, run game. So bear in mind that as you're doing things dynamically, if you're inserting content onto these pages, Um, you either are going to have to remember to manually add an event listener to it as a part of that creation process, or it's just easier to capture the event on the parent and then look at to make sure that it's operating on the things that we want. Um, the other downside is that, like, if we went in here and we made this even more dynamic, right? And it's really easy to accidentally break your events. If we went in here and said document dot get element by ID game controls, you know, if we do dot inner HTML equals whatever test, right? So we've replaced all that content in there with test. Those events would no longer have fired. Okay. So that is one of the things I wanted to touch on as to why you would choose to put your event listener on the parent instead of on the individual elements. Is that as you're building things dynamic, like if we were building a fitness tracker, or if in Andrew's golf app, if you were having it so that as you logged your scores, it's going to add maybe like a list item that says like longest drive of the day, 200 things, 202 feet. That content has changed, and so the event list, if you needed to have a delete button that would show up as a part of that option, it's easier to track it if the parent is is what's capturing the event. Is everyone kind of following along? And we'll continue to explore events. We're gonna use events every day for the rest of the course for the most part, right? This is how we attach functionality. Go ahead, Leah.
Have you added a way to like see which button you're pressing, or like
Um,
is that, or is it a feature you're gonna add
I
soon?
mean, that would be super easy. So let's do that as an example, right? So we've got our 3 buttons. Did I still? I took it out. Oh, it's right here. All right, so we're back to where we were, right? We got paper, rock, scissors. I click paper, the computer picked paper. Okay, so we have this thing here. We could make it so that, let's go into our thing. I don't have a button anymore. Let's take that out too. Where did we print out the information? Right here, right? So we said the bot's choice was here. So we would just have to add it, we could say game results. Yeah, so we already have an element. And so we could do document.get element by ID, game results, and we got inner HTML, and we could say you picked strong player choice. Strong. So right here where we have this empty element that we kind of left as a placeholder, you picked, it's actually saying player choice here. I need to plus player choice, right? Plus. You picked paper, you picked rock. So, and we can continue as we're doing this. Right now we're echoing you win to the console. We probably want to put that in here as well, right? So we maybe do, right? So instead of doing console.info, we could say let's actually do this here, right? So document.get element by ID game results, right? We already changed it to say you picked scissors. So now we just want to have it also say what the result was. So we'll do dot inner HTML equals, we'll copy this whole thing, so it's going to append it. We don't want it to completely overwrite it, but we'll say plus, let's give ourselves a line break, and then we'll say results, right? Because we're already building that result string just right here above this, right? It's going to either say tie game, bot, whatever beats whatever. And so now when we click it, scissors beats paper. Tie game. Rock beats scissors. So we might want to actually, now that we're seeing this live, right? If I pick paper, let's see if we can lose right now. Okay, paper beats rock. So right now the computer won. Scissors beat me. So maybe we want to change this order. Be like you lose or something, right? So we could have done this up in here even. Right, so this is kind of the iterative process. We've got the functionality working. We built ourselves a little game here, and now the question is how can we make it easier to use and easier to play with? Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
So how is it knowing what buttons you press when it's like when like it's targeting the like parent element of those.
Okay, yeah. So we did this last night, but it was like one of the last things we did. So we added the click event on game controls, and at the very top of game controls, we are checking event.target.className. We're making sure it's one of those buttons because we added that as a class. So it's only going to operate if it's one of these three. And then the next thing that we do is we say, the player's choice, what we picked, paper, rock, or scissors, is going to be the ID of whatever that button was. Right? So it's going to either be paper, rock, or scissors. We could have also made this, we could have done, we could have even cheated, right? We could have done data choice equals paper. Right? So we could have put this in as a value, or right. So I'll show a third way as well, right? Let's do this one first. Paper, rock, scissors. So I could have done player choice like this. This is the ID version, or I could do var player choice equals event.target because that's just our element, and then we can do data set dot choice. What do you call it? Choice, yeah. Right. This should work, I think. Yeah. So when we do, if we have an element, document.get element myID rock, right? The rock, because we added this data-choice thing, that's a special JavaScript type of mechanism that we have this data set object that will exist on any element that has this, and it's going to just keep basically an object that lets us reference those values. So we could put anything in here. And maybe what we would want to do with data set is we'll put like data choice, or we'll do data pix equals 0. All right, we start them off as 0 on each of these. And then every time we pick that button, we would say event.target.dataset.pix plus plus, right? So we're just going to add 1 to that every time we click a button. And so now if we look at this, I don't know if it actually, yeah, so it's going to change that to 6, right? Can you see how we're doing this? So the data dash attribute inside your HTML is one that was built exactly 100% just for JavaScript, so that we can come in here and access this data set object, which is going to give us those choices, right? And we can look at that at any time by just saying data set, right? Or I pick paper. Let's do paper. So that's another way, right? We did ID was the first way. Data set is the second way. The third way we could choose to do this would be, right? So we know that var player choice. Okay, I'll show you in the console, right? So we've got paper. This is an element, right? The value that we care about is already the inner text of this element, right? So I could do dot inner text, right? That's going to give me the word paper. The problem is this paper has a capital P, which is going to cause us problems. So we might want to say inner text dot str to lower case, right? Oh, lower. Well, what is it? 2 lowercase? I can never. So many languages have 2 lowercase. Yeah. So we could run 2 lowercase, and now we have that choice as well. So we could come in here and say player choice equals event.target.inner text dot 2 lowercase, and this also will work, right? So we have a whole bunch. Like, there's no right or wrong answer here. It comes down to what you pick as how you're going to do it, and then you just have to make sure that you're consistent. Yep. Go ahead, Leah.
So you said that data set that you said that was like built just for JavaScript, but it's for HTML. Like, is it bad practice to use that?
No, and a lot of libraries and a lot of JavaScript frameworks specifically will do things based on that data set attribute. It's a thing in HTML. It's a specific attribute that gives you a JavaScript object for free, so you can store whatever you want here. Now, the one thing to be aware of is, like, when we're in here writing code, like I've got a button, right? In theory, all I need to have my button work is just this, right? So that's nice and neat and tidy. But if you're adding a whole bunch of stuff in here, right? Maybe you have data, favorite dog, right? And you just keep adding attributes. This starts to become unruly as you're like scrolling and things like that. I mean, it's purely stylistic, but this is available to you, and you should be aware of that it exists, right? Because plenty of frameworks are going to do it, and it'll do stuff like you'll see things like maybe like a menu, like a job like a HTML menu, and you might come in and be like, you'll see a library that says, hey, make this like data collapsed equals true, and then your JavaScript is going to say, is it collapsed or not? And it's going to use this value to check it, and it'll toggle between them. So you'll see that pretty frequently going forward for sure. Cool. So we've now looked at 3 different ways to get our choice, but it all happens because we have this event object that is being passed in by our addEventListener function, right? Because we've got it this way. But it's made it so that we can write one really nice function that we care about. We can comment it well, and we can keep making improvements to this, and we don't have to worry about creating new events or managing where does this click come from. We wrote one click event that the entire game operates under. Now that works great in something simple like this, and there are definitely going to be occasions, especially as you're continuing to build your poker game, or Astray is making her story generator, where you might have to do some crazy complicated event management. Sometimes you just have to get complicated. There's no one size fits all with this stuff. As long as you're aware of, this is how events work, this is how I add an event to something, then you can build anything you want. Cool. Anything else we want to look at with events before we move on to regular expressions, which is its own separate animal? Good? All right. What was I looking for? Yeah. Good. Cool. All right. So what is a regular expression? This isn't very helpful to us. Let's pull open. Just do it right here. All right. So we have strings, right? And these strings contain some kind of information, right? So it can be like game info equals paper, beads, rock, right? Maybe it's a string like this. Maybe it's in a Stray's story generator case. Maybe it's paragraphs and paragraphs of content. But what we really need to do is, if we want to change this or modify it or manipulate it with it, regular expressions are one of the greatest tools we can have at our disposal to let us quickly parse and process text. So if I wanted to say, I've got game info, which says paper beats rock. If I wanted to change this so that I take out the word rock at the end and replace it with paper beats lizard, right? If I wanted to change that word, we know how to do this with arrays. Arrays have a whole bunch of functions like pop and push and slice. But with strings, it's much more complicated, right? There's a couple ways to do it. We could, game info dot like slice, right? That's a function we have. But we'd have to know each individual, like 20. Let's just assume it's 10. Right? Yeah, so we were close, right? We'd have to count each index to figure out where we're at, and we'd have to do, game info dot char at, and we'd want to search through this string to find where does the word start that I want to do. But there's a much more powerful tool called a regular expression. And what a regular expression is a pattern that describes how to manipulate a string, right? So a regular expression can be defined 2 different ways in JavaScript. The first is the old and trusty, we're going to use the object method, because a regular expression in JavaScript is an object. So we can say re, we'll just give it the name re, and we'll say new reg exp. And then inside of this, we can put in the word rock, right? So if we look at re, it's going to give us this weird format. This is the literal format of regular expressions. So when you work in other programming languages, and we're going to also do this in JavaScript today, a regular expression can also be defined using the literal, the literal version. So we might say re2 equals /rock. Okay. So you'll notice I didn't put this in quotes because JavaScript knows this is a regular expression because it's using these slashes, /. So if I do rock, re2 is exactly identical to our regular re, and we can check this. I think okay, it's going to tell us false. But these are the same things. Rock, re and re2 both have rock in them. So what can we do with regular expressions? A whole bunch of stuff, right? So the first one, this is a very simple regular expression. It just says the word rock. But let's just show how. So we can do re.test And we can put any string in this function, right? So the function is going to take a string as an argument. So we can say paper beats rock. This is gibberish. Right? So any length string at all, the test function is going to say, does this pattern exist inside of our string? Okay, so it's checking to see if the word rock, R-O-C-K, in that exact order, exists inside the string, and it does, right? But we could also make a brand new regular expression, and we can say var re3 equals not in that string. No, let's do new reg next, and let's just do scissors. Right. And so we can do re3.test, and let's copy that string. Right. And this is going to return false because scissors does not exist inside this string at all. So that's like the simplest possible use of a regular expression because we're just introducing this concept, right? It's searching for a single word. Where this starts to get powerful is as we learn, and we're going to explore this for probably the next couple of hours, regular expressions have a bunch of magic characters that let us check on anything we could ever possibly imagine that could be a string. Okay, so what else? So we know that test is in here. There's another way, right? So the string itself also has a mechanism that would be like, right? So this is a string, right? And I can do dot search and pass in a regular expression. So I can put in read, and it's going to tell you where it found that pattern at. Okay, so remember before we were trying to count out what letters were and stuff. We have made a regular expression that says the word rock, and we are searching inside this string to find where that pattern first happens. Okay, that's it's kind of like the same value but backwards, right? So if we start from the regular expression, regx.test, we paste in that string, right? Oh no, I have to read.test, paste in the string. That is testing it from the regular expressions point of view, and we can also do it from the reverse, which is start from the string and search. Okay, if the regular expression, this is rock, right? So rock is in this string. If we take rock out and we do search, it's going to give us a -1. So this is one of those special types of functions you need to be aware of, that the false result is a value. It's not null or undefined, it is -1. So if we were checking for this, whereas the other one, test, is giving us true or false, search is giving us -1 or position. So it's kind of like char at, right? Remember we were doing paper beats rock, char at 12, right? It's going to give us the letter T in this case. This gives you that power and flexibility to figure out what that is, okay? Everyone kind of following along so far? So that's one of the functions. How can I... All right, so let's look at some other ways regular expressions can be extremely powerful. And for that, we're going to pull up... right. Oh, let's look at replace first, right? So we were talking about paper beats rock, right? Let's add this to a variable so we don't have to keep typing this, pasting this string. So we'll say like, string, right? So paper beats rock. If we wanted to make a regular expression that said, we have a regular expression that says rock, we could do str.replace and then pass in a regular expression, and we're going to replace it with scissors, right? So it's going to return paper beats scissors. Okay. Replace is a special kind of function, though, in that it will also take just simple words, right? So we could do paper, rock, right? So str still has paper beats rock, but you can also just put a string in there. So this is like the simple version, but it takes a regular expression. So what we could do with regular expressions, and this is where it gets really powerful and complicated, is that we could do something like r plus. Let's do like slash w. Let's do b r plus, right? And then we'll do scissors sock, right? So we'll play with how these patterns and all of this works. as we go through this. But regular expressions give you a lot of complexity in that you can choose, you can match on a whole bunch of different things multiple times. We can control case sensitivity, right? So if we made one that was, what does stir say? Stir equals paper, beads, rock, right? So right now, our regular expression is looking for lowercase rock. So if we did this test right now, let's do stir.search re, right? It's going to give us -1 because that does not match. But what we can do with regular expressions, we'll say like var good re equals rock, and then we can put I at the end, right? You see this? This means it's going to be case insensitive. So now if we do stir.search and we do good re, we're going to get that position. So it's going to search all those different permutations. Okay? Everyone following along so far? So how would we, Estrella, tell me how I would create a regular expression in JavaScript. I don't need to know like how to actually make the regular expression, but I'm talking about like how would I define a regular expression?
With the new reg.
Okay, yeah, that's one. New reg exp, and that's a function, right? So it takes some kind of value. So we can do new regex rock, right? That gives us a regular expression. What is another way we could do this, Leo?
That's the one I was thinking.
So if I want to do var re equals, it's gonna, yeah. How would I? What's the other method?
You just go ahead, put in the slashes.
Yep.
Sorry, Leah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
It's okay.
as soon as you get this is the literal syntax for this. So, if we did this, for example, and I put quotes around it, right? Re is not a regular expression. Re is a string. So when you're doing this, if you're going to use this model, right, it's going to look kind of weird at first. It's going to be just it sitting off by itself inside slashes. Now there's a whole bunch of, I, G. There's special characters that can be in here, like W, 0 through 9, right? Okay. So if we wanted to this was one that Andrew was playing with like 2 weeks ago when we were playing with our patterns for input validation, right? Those are regular expressions, and so we could have a regular expression that is, let's make it digits, right? And we'll say 0 through 9, and then maybe we put a plus sign, right? So now digits is a regular expression that will look for every number 0 through 9. So if we made a string that was var long string equals, this is a string, I am 37. That is cool, right? If we do long string dot search and we put in digits, right, because that's the name of our variable, or that's the name of our regular expression variable, it's going to tell us 23. And 23 we can do long string dot char at 23. Right, it's going to tell us it's a 3, and then 24 would be a thing. Another one, right? So it's finding any digit. So what are some other functions that we might want to? Yeah. So let's do string.search because we did string.search. Let's do string.match. Let's try that one first, right? So search is going to find the position of that element. But if we do, let's see, string.match, and we'll say digits, right? It's going to give us back this crazy array. And the crazy array has everything we need to know what is happening, right? So this regular expression is looking for any number, 0 through 9, and the plus sign is telling it look for more than 1, right? So it can be 1 or it could be more than 1, right? And so the return of match is going to tell us it found a 37 starting at line 23, right? So this is the same behind the scenes. What's happening is that if we did long string dot replace and we put in digits, right? And maybe next year I'm going to be 38, right? So I would replace that with 38. And so now it says, this is a string, I am 38. Pretty cool, huh? And maybe what we also want to do is we want to have another regular expression. We'll say var not cool. We're going to make this say cool. And maybe we want to make this case insensitive, right? And so we might want to use long string dot replace not cool for that regular expression. Look for the word cool on here and say that is terrible, right? Growing old is not as much fun. Yes, Andrew?
So in that second position, like when you did long string dot replace digits 38, where the 38 is, could you put a variable there that's referencing like an input? So if you have a string on a page, you basically, like a user could input something and it would update the string in that manner.
So let's look, yeah, that's exactly what you would do it for, right? So let's do document dot get element by ID, and we know we have a rock, and maybe we'll put in here data dot data set dot, what was it, picks or choice? Forgot what we called this in our HTML. Picks, right? So we're just going to replace it with the number 0, right? So I am 0. But if I click rock a bunch of times, player choice is not defined. What? What did we break? Oh, we commented out all of our things. Let's just go back to this one. Right, so I pick rock, right? Rock now has a whole bunch of choices on it. Let's quickly create our variables again. Digits. Yeah, right, so we have our digits regular expression. If I come in here and I say I need to make a long string as well, right? Okay, so we got our thing. I can come in here and say long string, replace any digits we find with the value of that pix data set object, but it could just as equally be an input value, right? And we'll say I am 5. Click this 10 more times, right, or a couple more times, and I replace again. I'm 12 now. I am 13. So regular expressions really were designed to give us a very powerful tool to do crazy stuff with text, with large strings. It can be small strings, large strings. We use it for input validation behind the scenes, right? The HTML, we have all this new HTML5 stuff that would say things like, it has to be 12 digits long. So that is a regular expression, right? So it would be like var phone equals, and it would be like 0 through 9, 12, right? So this is going to match on 12 digits, right? So if we did var phone, we do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. If we do, I just overwrote my regular expression. Gosh. And we'll make this phone string. So we do phone string dot test, or let's do match so we can just see how it's doing. Phone, which is our regular expression. Oh, gosh dang it. Phone string. We do phone string dot match, and we put in phone, which is our regular expression. It's going to give us that one that it found, right? It found a 12-digit long number. If we made phone string, let's make phone string smaller. Var phone string equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And now we do match. It's going to return null to us because it did not find a match. We could also use this inside of a large paragraph, right? If we were going to build, maybe we wanted to build some kind of cool cybersecurity thing that would look at emails and pull out all phone numbers. What is a phone number? Let's actually make. Let's assume we're using like 3-3-3, right? So we can do var phone reg exp, right? We'll say it could be 0 through 9 dash. We need to have this be 3. 0 through 9. 3 dash 0 through 9 4, right? So it'd be like 219 whatever 0000. Okay. So this is our phone regex. If I have a phone number in here, let's just make sure this matches. Phone string equals 219-777. Right? So that we do phone string dot match phone reg x. Okay. It found our phone number. Right. This could find a phone number inside a giant paragraph. Right. So let's do this. Bar long string of stuff. Right? Be like, hello, I am happy today. I love panda bears. Are they not amazing? My phone number is 219-777-000. Or you can call Steve at 219-777-001. Have a great weekend, right? So we've written some kind of email or something, right? And it's got 2 phone numbers in it. I can check for those phone numbers using long string dot, what did I call it? Long string of stuff dot match phone reg text, right? And we're gonna find a phone number, and it tells us what it is and where it came from, what position. Okay. We have another thing that we can do, right? It found one phone number, right? What if we wanted to find any phone number, right? So the way we would do that in regular expression, right? We know that what does I do? If we put an I at the end of our regular expression. Estrella knows the answer.
It makes it case insensitive.
Which doesn't really apply to numbers, right? Numbers are just numbers. But there's another one that is G. And what G says is it says globally, right? So it's going to look at one or more, right? So if we change phone regex to /G, now if we do this, it found 2 phone numbers in this long string of text, right? Found both of them. That's pretty awesome, right? So we can use regular expressions with just very simple, I mean, this isn't simple, this is crazy, right? It's got a whole bunch of weird characters in here. We're saying, 0 through 9 3 times, dash 0 through 9 3 times, dash 0 through 9 4 times. That's kind of crazy. It's hard to read. And we're definitely going to look at some tools that will help us remember these. And there's a whole bunch of really nice web apps that will let us play with regular expressions really easily. But with one simple little line of code, we have extracted 2 phone numbers from this could have been a book, right? We could have uploaded 10,000 pages and had a regular expression find every phone number in there. Okay? That's pretty cool. Or we could have said, oh my gosh, I published this book and there are phone numbers in here. We could have come in here and said, replace every phone number with, let's give it one of those fake Hollywood numbers. We can do 555, 123, 2121, right? So now every phone number in this entire string is replaced, all with one special little syntactic thing. So when we learn this is super powerful. Did someone raise their hand?
So if you wanted to, could you just go to a random web page and extract data from the web page in the console about the web page?
Yes. Right, because we know that we have document dot body, right? That's the entirety of the page, and we can do dot inner HTML, right? That's all the content of this page. So in theory, I could do document.body.innerhtml.match, and then we do what do we call it? Phone regex. Right, there's no phone numbers on this page, right? So it's going to give us null. But if we quickly added one, let's go in here and add a phone number. Let's say the paper button has 219-777-0001, right? So now there is that information here. This should work, right? It found the phone number, right? Super cool. And that is, when you look at things like browser extensions, behind the scenes they're just running JavaScript. If it says something like, hide all ads, they're using stuff like this, searching through the elements for an ad, and they're saying if it matches, page whatever .html, delete it. So they'll use the regular expression to find it because it's just working on strings. Cool. So what else can we do, right? So we learned this version, right, where we're doing 0 through 9. Okay, we learned if we use a curly bracket, we can put a certain number of digits that it expects to find. We could have also just done 0 through 9, 0 through 9, 0 through 9, right? So that's going to do the same thing, which is find a number, find a number, find a number. This curly bracket 3 just lets us shortcut that, right? So we can still, it's going to still find a number. There's another special one that we probably want to look at, right? So it would be /d, and if we put 3 here, /d means any digit, right? So there are a couple special commands like that. So you might see 0 through 9 like this. You might see it like this. Both are the same thing. Okay? Why would you want to use 0 through 9 like this, right? Instead of a /d.
Would like /d, would that include like negatives?
Yeah. So if I let's make one real quick. Let's see. Let's see. Var negative string equals this has -4 in it, right? Let's see what this happens. And we'll do var neg dig equals /d. Right? So the problem is going to be this, right? If we do negative string dot match neg dig, right? It's going to find the digit. It is not finding that it has a minus sign in front of it, because this string, like, we know that in JavaScript we have numbers, right? So like var num equals -4, right? If we look at num, it has a value of -4. But in the context of a string, this is not a number. This is a character of negative sign and a character of 4. So if we wanted to capture both of those, we'd probably have to write it ourselves like this, like a negative sign. And then let's see, so it's going to give us the string -4. We'd have to then go in here and say our res equals. And so if we look at our result now, we'd have to do res 0, and then we'd probably want to do parse int, right? Parse int. So we have to go through a couple extra steps if we do care about negative numbers, right? /d is going to match on the number itself. But if we cared about negative numbers, we'd have to make sure we included the negative sign. But if we wanted to just capture, if we were looking for negative and positive numbers, one thing that we could do in our regular expression is we could do a question mark. I think this is right. So neg dig is, it's going to find our -4. But let's go to, let's make a more complicated string. Right. So this has a -4 in it, and it has a normal 6 in it, right? So let's do, here, let's just negative string dot match neg dig. So it found both of those, right? The question mark says if it exists or it doesn't, capture both, right? So it's going to look for both of those, right? That's another one of those, like, you would have to know that a question mark means 0 or 1, right? There's another, right? The plus sign means 1 or more, right? So if we did D plus, right? Keep hitting Control S, which is not right. Let's look at and a longer number like, right? So if we do this now, what do we think is going to happen? It's going to find -4, 6, 5, 4, 4, 3. And then the same would be true if it had a and -2000. Right? Right? It's going to find all of those, right? Because we put a plus in. But if we did not have a plus in, right? If we took this out, it's just going to match on the first, right? So it's going to find all those digits, but it's going to put them in weird orders. So if we cared about, like, capture the whole number, right? What's another thing that could happen in numbers, right? So let's look at this, right? This could have 20,000, right? And so now if we do this, I need to change it back to the old plus, and we'll match it. right? It's getting -4, 6, 5, 4, 4, 3, -20, 0, 0, 0. That probably is not correct. We probably want to capture, what do you think we could change our thing here to be? Let's try this. Right? I don't know if this will work, but let's test it. It didn't work. Oh, but it did capture the comma, right? So we would probably need to do something even more complicated and do, all right, it could be, right, and then we'll do /d plus, right? So you can see now we're saying, if there's a negative sign, give it to us. If there's any number of digits, give it to us. If there's a comma, that's fine, give it to us. And if there is a comma, if there are any more digits after that, give it to us. And maybe we need to even make this like optional. So let's try this now. Yeah. Okay, well it gave us 1, which is kind of closer, but it still left, oh, and it also, okay, so here. Yeah, so you see, regular expressions have a ton of power, and they're also crazy. There's a famous webcomic about like using regular expressions to process strings, and it. I'll see if I can find it in our break. It's 6 o'clock right now. I think we've had a pretty good overview of how weird regular expressions are, and then we'll start looking at some tools and some ways we're actually going to use it in more depth. But this has been a lot of fun trying to create them on the fly, because there are tools that make this easier. It's 6 o'clock right now. Let's come back at maybe 6:15. Yeah? Everybody having fun so far? Have your brains melted?
Complete mush.
Good, perfect. All right, well, go take a break and walk around, and we'll see you in a bit. Start the recording. All right, cool. So we're gonna play more with this digit stuff for sure. But let's talk about like how would you do this in a real world, right? So one of the things that you might use regular expressions for is to sanitize your user's input, right? So let's say you had a phone number field, and perhaps right, we got this phone number in here, right? Did we have our cool phone number one? Anyway, let's just write one real quick. So we'd do like var phone nums equals what was it? It was let's do /d 0 3, right? We'll do dash same thing, right? Right, then /d 4, right? So this will find all of our phone numbers in our document.body.innerHTML. We can do .match phone num3, right? That's going to give us a phone number. So now we have a phone number, okay? Var phone, right? But maybe what we want to do with this phone number is, right? We do 0. This is a string. What we also probably would want to do with a regular expression is replace all of the dashes, right? If we want to like sanitize this so we can store it safely in a database or make sure that it's all formatted correctly, we would probably use a regular expression to come in here and say maybe like /d, right? So any so uppercase D is any non-digit, right? And then we might do exec, and we'll say phone 0. Excuse me, replace, right? Replace phone 0 dot replace, and we'll say any non-digit with nothing. So now we got to do this globally, right? So that's the kind of thing that you're going to do pretty frequently with regular expressions. Doing super complicated ones like up here when we're trying to make crazy stuff, you'll do this eventually, and you might do this frequently depending on what career field you're in. We used to use regular expressions pretty often in a programming job I had before in the government, where we had like formatted blobs of text, and we wanted to extract like, here's a latitude and longitude, here's a timestamp. We wanted to get all that stuff regardless of what the input is, and so we had a whole bunch of regular expressions that looked for those types of fields and would find them and pull them out for us so we can use them. Okay. Another thing that you're probably going to do pretty often. Let's make a quick change to our code here. Let's just add in a text area, right? Text area that equals whatever TA. Call it TA. And we'll say rows equals 5, calls equals 40. Let's make it 10 so it's big. Right? So you got a text area. You're going to build this for your users. You're expecting them to type in. Let's give ourselves some extra spacing here. So we come in here and we type in a bunch of stuff like hello. What was our big long? We had a big, nice long string here. Right? Cool. This is good. And maybe we want to go in here and say, my phone. Why do I have keyboard events firing? That's annoying. Keyboard events? No, this. Let's take this out. Oh. Okay, good. All right. So paste in that thing. This is a text area. You're going to build an app that lets your users type in large amounts of content, and it's going to look something like this. Let's make this a little bigger so we can see it. Great. So I'm in here and I'm saying, my phone number is 209. I like cats. This is fun. Right. So I'm typing any kind of, we could have lorem ipsum text in here. Let's generate some real quick. Lorem 50. Right, let's just copy all that. Right. So we've got a big long paragraph of information. Okay. You're going to probably write, you're probably going to write code that modifies this block of text. And if we wanted to come in here and search for, let's see, var, let's use our phone number one, right? And we do document.get element by ID ta dot value, right? Look at that's a huge big long string. You'll do things like dot search phone number, okay? Or we can do match, which is going to give us the actual phone number. Okay, you'll do stuff like this pretty frequently when you're dealing with user input. Like Estrella, when you're working on your excellent story editor thing, you might use regular expressions to let you quickly, you might build in some kind of find and replace, right? We have this built into the browser, so this is kind of a silly example. But like if I was searching for phone, right, it finds it, but maybe you want to make an input that says, let's copy all this. Let's do er input ID equals find, type equals text, and then we'll do another one, find, replace, input ID equals replace, type equals text. Okay. Let's paste our stuff in here. Right, it's got our phone number, but we want to implement find and replace. So if I find 219-777-0000, right, we might come in here and say var re equals document.get element by ID find, right? So re dot value. Right, so we've got a string in here. We can convert this into a regular expression using that other syntax format. So we could say var find re equals new reg x re. Right? So if we look at find re now, yeah, it's giving us that. We're looking for this exact match, right? It's exactly what we're going to find. And then we would do something like, if I replace it with 219-000-000, or we can even maybe do something like phone number hidden. Right? So we might do something like document.get element by ID, what do we call it, TA, dot value equals document.get element by ID TA dot value dot replace find re with document.get element by ID replace dot value. Right. So what we're doing here, can everyone kind of see what this is? Is that we're going to set the value of this paragraph of this text area to the value of the current value, replacing the contents of this box that we turned into a regular expression with the value of whatever's in this replace box. So as soon as we run this, it's swapped out. My phone number is hidden. Right? Everyone see that? Pretty cool. So you'll do stuff like that pretty frequently. All right, I'm going to show off 2 resources. I think the first one is I'm going to send this to everybody as a link. I would love for you all to flow through this course tomorrow. It's a very simple introduction to regular expressions that builds off of the knowledge, right? So we could do this together tonight, and we kind of play with this a little bit. It's just asking you to make patterns, right? So it would be like A through Z. A through Z, right? How does it want us to put it? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? And it's going to show you as you type these things if it's working or not, right? So it's going to explain, hey, this is how you do letters, right? And so we got that pattern, and we click continue. It's going to take us to the next one, 0 through 9, right? So it's going to teach you that we could do /D, okay? Or we could do /-D, okay? Or 0 through 9. So just showing you how you're, all the different ways you can access these things, right? So then it's going to tell you, how would we match ABC1, right? So we want to do wildcard dot, right? And then not /D. What are we looking for here? Right? So work through this. I'm going to include this in our homework night and just go through these exercises. It shouldn't take more than a couple hours, maybe tomorrow. And this will really be the focus of your homework, one of the main things you do. But it's important to be familiar with how you build these. Now, the other tool that we want to take a look at, and this is what I was talking about, like you don't need to memorize all these things. There are excellent tools like this one that we could take all the stuff we were playing with on this page, right? We can take all this stuff. Let's change this back to a phone number. Right? 219-777-000, right? And we could paste a big string in here, and then up at the top, we've got a regular expression builder, and it's going to start teaching you what it's doing as it does it, right? So if we did 0 through 9, right? And it's showing you that it's doing, here's the /, here's the trailing /, and then you can click on this and set those special options. So one we haven't looked at is multi-line, which is M. So if you actually were in like, a couple different paragraphs, you might want to use multi-line. You're going to want to make sure that you pick ECMA script over here on the left, which is JavaScript. But it also, so regular expressions are going to exist in a lot of different programming languages, and as you continue your careers, you might do Python or you might do PHP. They're going to have slightly different behaviors and slightly different performance. But let's check, make sure you select JavaScript in here, and now you can start building this, and it's going to explain what it's doing. So all those different steps we were doing like pattern.match and looking at the results. This is showing this to you in real time, right? So we can do plus, right? And now it's going to match, so it's going to show you match a single character in the list below, right? And then you can do question mark, and it'll say match a single character, and then it's going to tell you matches the previous token between 1 and any number, right? So you can look at each individual element of here, and it's going to explain what it's doing over here on the right. So let's test. Right, we had one working. It was /D plus, or maybe let's just do 3. Right, so that's going to tell us it's going to match on that one. Right, if we wanted to build a phone number, then we can do /D3 /D4, right? So that's going to give us our phone number, matches right over here. And then it gives you a whole bunch of quick references down here at the bottom, where you can quickly see, hey, match on a word boundary. So let's match on anything that is a word boundary, right? That's going to be all those spaces in between words. If we wanted to match on a non-word boundary, that would be every letter that is not at the edge of a word, right? If we wanted to match on just the start of a string, so we could do that. It's going to match the first line of every sentence. I don't know if you can see that, it's purple over here, right? And then we can also do $, which is going to match to the end of the line, all of our carriage returns. Right? Another one that is interesting, right? If we wanted to get all of the words in here, right, we can do word, and then we can do plus. And you can see it's now broken this up into a whole bunch of matches. This has 4, and it has a normal, right? So it's with one single thing, this is giving us pretty much the same functionality that we got when we were writing code. What was that? Document dot get element by ID TA dot value. Right. This is our big long string. You know, when we were learning how to split on the space character, that turns this into a big array. We could have also done that by saying document.getElementById.value match, and then we could do /word character plus, right? G. And it's given us that same array, 83 elements. This one has 79. Why did it do that? Oh, because some of the non-word characters in here are dashes, right? So you can see 77. When we split on spaces, it kept that phone number together. When we split on on word characters, it treated that dash as separate words, right? So this is doing some extra stuff that maybe is interesting, maybe we care about, right? But there are a bunch of different ways to go about this, right? We could also, right, because we know that we can write regular expressions here, let's just put in a space, right? So this is going to do the same exact thing. It's going to, oh man, it found all of the spaces, right? So let's do, how do we, oh, we matched on that, so let's do /b plus. Yeah, I don't know how we would do that a different way. But this tool is incredibly powerful because it's going to explain to you all the things. And you can click on this, right? And it's going to give you a quick example, right? Matches anything other than a decimal and digit. Where else might we go? You know, we're going to send you guys this tool. I'm going to paste it right now so that it's in here for us as a reference. I'm also going to paste that learning lesson. I highly encourage you to go through this as far as you can. Okay, where else, you know, based on, you know, this is kind of a trick question. If you knew, hey, I need to do a bunch of crazy stuff with strings, and I remember there's regular expressions, what would we search on maybe and see if we could find a reference that would help us learn about regular expressions? Like, give me a Google search query. Andrew, what would you search on if you wanted to use regular expressions? Or maybe it's not Google. Where would you go if you wanted help with this, maybe?
I would probably just Google regular expression syntax for finding capitalized names or something. Yeah. If you're looking for like proper names or something in a paragraph.
Yeah. And we would get to a page like this, and it's going to give us. So this is Java, right? That's probably going to be a problem for us. Maybe we'd also put in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's important to be able to search. You know, knowing the term regular expression is half the battle, because now you can search for regular expression for X, right? We could do if we wanted to, like, how would we find phone numbers? We could say Google regular expression to find phone numbers, right? And so this is actually probably a better version. Let's see if there's an accepted answer, right? So remember, we were doing like a simple version. This one is going to check, hey, from the start of the word, here, let's paste this bad boy into our tester, right? We know we have a phone number in here. Oh, we got a pattern error. All right, so that one's that one's broken. Here. Let's do this one. Nope. Let's see if this works. Okay. And it's going to explain what it's doing. Right? It's saying it matches a single digit, but let's say we change this to that. Is this going to find it as well? No, it doesn't. But what if we had one without dashes? Okay. So this pattern is also checking to see if you know, maybe there's not dashes in here, right? Remember we were using the question mark to do that. This is the way we would go about doing this. If we wanted to, you know, oftentimes you can just search for regular expression to do X, and you're going to find an answer that's really good or really, really close. Some of the things to be concerned with in regular expressions is that some of these formats, you know, can be crazy at times, right? And so, like here's a common example. You know, before, if you wanted to validate an email address, right, we would do regular expression to validate email address. Right? This is the formal regular expression to validate an email address. Okay? Really smart people spent months and weeks probably crafting something like this. And this is just, if you actually look at RFC 5322, it tells you what can or cannot be a valid email address. But the problem is an email address is composed of the address part at the beginning, an @ sign, and then it can be a domain name, which has its own regular expression for that, right? Because you've got .com, .info, .org, all kinds of things. So it's going to have probably a dot, but you can also have subdomains. So, you know, we're all used to having something like eric@gmail.com, but eric@mail.gmail.com is also technically a valid email address, right? So it can have any number of dots, and so you need something as complicated as this. Let's just get this and throw it in the tester so we can play with it. Okay. Yep, perfect. So let's put in an email address. me@ericharrison.info. And you can see that it matched it. But this could also be test.ericharrison.info. It's going to match it. This could be, maybe there's a plus sign in here. And we could say, like, no spam. Right? That's a valid email address. And so this mechanism has to be smart enough to capture all of those possible configurations. But you can see that just by pasting in this one line of code, now we've got something that will find any email address out of the system. Now, I don't expect you to be able to just write this from scratch. This is crazy, right? But if you know that this is called a regular expression, you can find someone who's already put in the time and energy to do so. Most of the time when you're running regular expressions, you're going to be doing very simple ones. And it's going to be things like, you know, find me all the digits, right? And maybe we need to make this global. Right? So that's the sort of thing you're going to use this for pretty frequently. Or maybe you just need it to, like, find and replace things. Or, you know, maybe in the example that you were talking about earlier, like, you could run this against a web page and pull out every, like, we use that regular expression that was the email address one, right? This one. Where'd it go? Right? So let's say you were building a spider, right? You're building some kind of robot in JavaScript to go read a bunch of web pages. You might come through here and say, here, var email read equals, right? We'll put, right? And we probably need to make this case insensitive as well, right? So what's the case insensitive flag?
It's I.
I, yeah. So now we have a really good email read. So what we could do is document.body.inner.html .match email read. Right? And if there were any email addresses in here, which there aren't in this one, let's quickly add one. Right? Maybe you wanted to find every email address that was on a website so that you could use it for, you know, if you were going to build some kind of marketing tool. So you could put in a whole bunch of competitors' websites and get 600 email addresses. Right? You can come in here and let's say me@ericharrison.info. Maybe we got another one that's like support@microsoft.com. And we maybe .com. And then we maybe have another one that's inside of a list item like strong. We'll say or whatever ERH@the clubhouse. Strong. Okay. So now our page actually has some email addresses in it. we've got our regular expression here, and we're going to pull out every single email address on this page, and maybe we store this in a database. And now you've built a really cool tool in 2 lines of code. Awesome. You guys see the power of this? But it's also crazy, right? Kind of overwhelming at times. But use tools like this to help you understand what is happening, right? Because it's got this explanation in here, and it's going to tell you match a single character, right? And it's going to walk you through each and every component of this thing, and you can click on them, and it will take you to the should take you to the explanation. But it's going to show you matches a single character in the range between A and Z, matches a number, matches a exclamation point, matches a pound sign, matches a dollar sign, matches a percent sign, right? All of those things can be in email addresses, right? So I can put in here like exclamation, percent, right? This regular expression up here is telling us that it's going to match all these different things, all the way up to this @ sign, right? So these are all the things that can be valid in an email address. And I would be willing to bet some of this stuff in here, like it's matching Unicode characters. So if we had a Chinese email address or something, right? This should match that too, right? Let's look that up. Let's test. Chinese email address. I don't know what this is. Okay. We can see that this has an @ sign. Let's see if this works. Whoop. Okay, so this regular expression does not work on Chinese apparently, which is interesting, even though technically it probably should, right? So we might actually have to find a different regular expression that works on all of them. Cool. Any questions about regular expressions? I know it's a lot. It's kind of crazy. We've provided 2 tools so that you can start to play with this. And I'm going to assign this as homework for tonight. I would encourage you to get through this as far as you possibly can and read everything, because it's going to explain what it's doing, why it's doing it, starting from lesson 1. Go ahead, Leah.
Could you search and see if there's a if you have a variable that's a string, if you can use that variable in the find thing?
Describe what you're talking about.
Instead of in email read,
Mm-hmm.
could you have a variable in there?
Could I put a variable inside the middle of this?
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. You're saying if I had the word Eric, my name, Eric. Let's make it lowercase so it's easy. All right. So if I had this, could I add it inside of a regular expression?
Yeah, exactly.
Turn this into regular. Yeah. The way to do that would be to use the new regex function, because regex this takes a string, right? So we can put in here my name, which is going to turn that into it's using the value of that variable as the regular expression. Could we turn it, let's see, my name, right? If I do my re equals, say, my name. The problem is, as soon as you put in this slash, it assumes you're inside of a regular expression. So if I put in my name here, right, it's going to be literally searching for the regular expression, my name. So I think the way to do it with a variable would be like this, where we're calling it this way. Does that make sense? Or does that answer your question? Do you have a different example?
That answers it.
Okay. Can you modify a regular expression? I don't know that answer. Maybe there's another way. Let's see. Modify existing regular expression in JavaScript. Right? There might be a method or a function here. Yeah, so the way you would want to do it for sure with variables would, if you had an array of words, for example, you would do, they're showing you that you're going to have to do this as a string. So you're going to have to use this new regex method. Yeah, I don't think it has any other, so let's just do new r equals new reg x. Right, let's make ourselves a blank regular expression. R dot prototype. So now we're diving into the internals. Can we change it? Re-dot compile. What does this do? R dot compile. Oh, I think that's giving us our output. Let's see what happens if we give it a... Okay. Okay, so there's a function in here on any regular expression that is called dot compile. And so if you had a regular expression that existed already and it was like r dot, let's do r equals something here, right? We've got a regular expression. We can also do r dot compile and change it. So if we wanted to put in like my name, right, that would change it to Eric now. So r is different. I don't know if that is useful at all. I've never used that. What else can we do with compile? Let's see. JavaScript, regular expression, compile. Maybe this takes some more functions. Oh, it's even telling you this is deprecated. Don't use it. And yeah, it recreates it. So if we wanted to like, make it r compile my name and we put in maybe G. Like we've just turned this into a globally searching, or we could come in here and say GI. So that would recreate it. Probably the best thing to do would be just use new reg x. Whatever your variable is, my name, and maybe GI. I would do something like that. Cool. Regular expressions. Yes.
Is this only used purely on the front end, or would you use regular expressions if you wanted to extract something from a database also?
Yes. You're going to use this everywhere. Anywhere you're doing stuff with strings, regular expressions will be a useful tool. Now, there is a caveat. Regular expressions are slow, or can be slow. There is often a quicker and faster way to do something than using a regular expression, especially for complex things. But it is a great thing to be aware of because you can do a lot of complex things in a very short amount of space. So, even some database engines will let you search sometimes using regular expressions. And then as you're doing stuff in the back end, when we're building code that like takes user input and stuff, you might use regular expressions to like verify or validate input, right? So if we have a form here and we assumed that like when I'm typing content in here, maybe we want to like strip stuff out before we save it. We would use a regular expression on the back end to ensure that it works, right? Because we cannot trust anything that comes from the browser. And we'll talk about why. From a security standpoint, anything that the user is doing is untrustworthy 100% of the time. And so all this JavaScript that we're learning right now about like making things happen on the page, we've got this paper, rock, scissors game, right? Tie game, right? All this stuff. This is client-side JavaScript. It's running in my browser and my browser alone. But if it's running in my browser by browser alone, like take Leah's poker game as a great example, right? If she's building this to be an actual multiplayer poker game in which there's actual real money on the line, I could just go in there and say like, well, my card is actually, card A, right? Card A equals, king of clubs, right? And on my browser, I might have just won. So we've always got to verify and validate the input on the back end, especially in games, especially banking, anything you do that's serious. JavaScript in the client, on the client side and on the computer of the users, is just there to make things look cool, right? To make it prettier, to make it, we still want to have it so that I click scissors and the game happens, but I shouldn't trust that I clicked scissors and that, I can't trust that, if we were really building this a game, I'm going to click scissors send my choice to the server, have the server decide who won or lost, and then send the results back. And I'm still going to use JavaScript to capture the data and display it nicely like we have here, but I can't guarantee that I haven't cheated if I'm doing this purely on my end. And so another great example, I have this JavaScript thingy here, right? So JavaScript is enabled. If I click this button, JavaScript is no longer enabled. This page does nothing. And so we're going to want to have graceful fallbacks. Server-side programming is, to me, way more fun and exciting than all this client-side stuff. Now, in the context of this course, we're going to use JavaScript, the programming language, in both places. And so as we dive into doing server-side stuff later on, the language is going to be very familiar. You're still going to use regular expressions. You're still going to use, integer or numbers, strings, all those good things that we've been doing here client-side. But we just didn't want to complicate it by being like, now you're going to go install Node, when we're just trying to focus on, like, it's really easy for me to write a single line of code and have something change up here in a way that's easy to teach. Go ahead, Leah.
Are other languages more common than JavaScript for backend stuff?
Yes. Just to give, and they may or may not be more common. It depends on like how you're looking at that word, right? So, for web development specifically, I think something like 65% of all websites on the entire planet are running PHP. Okay, that doesn't mean that that's the best programming language or that's the best job. The biggest reason for that is that like 30% of all websites are running WordPress, right? If you guys have heard of WordPress before, it's like a content management system. You click a button, it's installed, and you can be up there blogging or building a website. Well, WordPress is written in PHP, so right there you're getting 26 million websites that are on PHP. There's a lot of websites written on Ruby on Rails. Ruby is a completely different programming language. Node, which is back-end JavaScript, is relatively new in this, right? It was like 2007 or 2008 when Node came around, and it wasn't even a mature technology for a few years after that. It was like a hobby language. But why we're doing that in this class is because rather than teach you 4 different programming languages, like we already learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, I don't want to teach you a 4th, right? Because that, even though we try to point out like regular expressions, you're going to use it in JavaScript, you're going to use it in PHP, you're going to use it in Python, but how you use it is different, and you got to learn. We're still trying to remember. What is the function to get the element of the ID of the element, right? Those are functions. We have to remember all those. It's like the language of the language, right? The words, the verbs, the nouns. How do we interact with the program? And so adding extras into the mix would just make it even more complicated. But the good news is, the better you get with one programming language, right? Because we've learned for loops, we've learned conditionals. Every programming language is going to have them. And even if the wording is a little bit different, you should be able to read it and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. And then you'll be able to quickly pick up more. So, I have in my career written basic, PHP, Perl, Python, C++, C, a little bit of assembly, C#, Ruby. Am I super fluent in all of them at any given time? No. I mean, last time I wrote Ruby was like 6 years ago. But I guarantee you if I got a job tomorrow that was a Ruby developer, I'd be up and running in a week. I wouldn't take any time at all. So being really good at one language translates into being really good at a lot of languages, or at least being able to pick it up super quickly. Focus on one until you're awesome, and then learn more. When I was a kid, and I was learning programming for the first time, like between the ages of 11 and 15, I'm going to learn a new language this week. And what I did was I learned poorly a bunch of languages in ways that I couldn't actually use them. So I strongly encourage you to just continue to focus on JavaScript until you get your first job. And if your first job is using a different language, you're still probably going to use JavaScript if you're doing web development, because JavaScript is a client-side language of all browsers. But then you might need to learn a back-end language as well. It's going to be similar. Like, we do our if blocks like this. If var I equals 0, I plus plus, I is less than 10, I plus plus, right? So that's our if statement syntax. If this was PHP, it would be like if I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. Right? It's going to be similar. Right? If we were in Python, it'd be like, not if, but for. I'm talking about the wrong thing. For. Right? That's JavaScript. Oh, it's just, and then PHP. This is actually going to error, right? Where are we at? 4. Okay. And then if it was Python, it'd be something like 4. I don't even remember Python syntax. I think they just use like I, 0. I is less than 10, right? So these translate directly over to each other, and then yeah, I plus plus. And then Python is super weird in that they don't use brackets, so it'd be like this, I think, and then you would tab over one, right? So you'd have to learn, hey, if I'm in Python, there's no curly brackets here. They use curly brackets just for lists or dictionaries, I think they call them, but it's the same thing. It's an associative array that has a key and a value. So you're really just learning the terminology. All right. It is 6:55. Next, we're going to play with a little bit of HTML validation, which is going to use regular expressions. We looked at this when we were taking a peek at some of the inputs early in week 1 or early week 2. I don't know if I want to jump into some of the more advanced arrays, but maybe we'll do that as well today. We'll just kind of play it by ear, see how we're feeling. Let's take a break, 6:55. Let's come back at 7:15. 7:12. 7:12. Recording. All right. So we played with this a little bit in the early days, but I wanted to just explore, now that we know what regular expressions are and how we're going to use patterns, how this is useful, right? So let's add a few inputs in here. All right, we got a few of these, right? So we have some inputs. Great. All right. So what we can do, we've learned that we have a required attribute. This is going to mean that, like if I wrap all this in a form, action equals, index.html, method equals get, right? Oh, here, let's put this in here too, right? And let's put the R between here, right? We've learned about required. And what required does is it says, hey, if there's nothing in here, don't let us submit it. So we can come into our page, right? We've got our form here. If I don't put anything in, fine, because I put required, and I hit enter. Let's give ourselves a submit button so we can easily test this. So we'll do br input type equals submit, value equals submit form. Okay. So we have a button. Required, this attribute on its own is just going to make sure there's a value in there, right? But this does not check for spaces, right? So we could have empty spaces in here, and it is going to let it do it. So one of the other things that we can use with regular expressions is that we could use pattern, right? And we could say, this would be a regular expression in this field, right? So we can say this only accepts A through Z, and then A through Z, right? So now spaces won't be allowed at all. It won't let us put this in the input, right? So if I put in, right, that's good, and I click that, it's going to say, please match the requested format, because space is an invalid character, okay? If I take out all the spaces, right, now it will let me submit. Why did it not? Please match the requested format. Why did this not work? Let's look this up. HTML pattern attribute. Oh, because we're looking for 1, right? So we would need to put in, just like with the other ones, right? This should work now. If we do plus, right? So any number. If I type in ASDF, right? It will submit it, right? Let's change this to get so we can watch this. What is get? Oh, we didn't give it a name. Let's do name equals find. Name equals place. Okay? So if we type in, right? Great. So up here you can see we've sent in that thing because we have changed this to use the regular expression pattern that we just learned, when we were learning about regular expressions, we're saying we're looking for any A through Z or A through Z and a plus sign. So we could also, just like with other regular expressions, if we wanted to make this digits only, right, we could say any number of digits. Right, I come in here and if I type ASDF and I click submit, right, that's not going to work. If I put in a number, it works. Okay. Now, what if we wanted to match on non-digits? What is that special slash? Andrew, do you remember?
Capital D.
Capital D. Yep. So if we type in that, right, it's going to say please match, right? Type in ASDF, that does match. And also ASDF is going to let us do spaces, right? Because slash D, because space is a non-digit character. Okay. Some other validation attributes we might want to care about is min length, right? So we can say 5. So if I put in any number of characters greater than 5, it works. If I put in ASDF, which is 4, it's going to say please lengthen this text to 5 or more characters, and then it even tells us you're using 4, right? So if I put in another letter, everything works. Another one we might use is max length equals 10, right? So ASDF, max length is interesting in that it stops us from continuing to type. Okay, that's an unexpected and delightful treat. So if we were doing a phone number field here, right? Let's maybe make a phone number field. Phone. Input type equals phone. Name equals phone. ID equals phone. And we'll say required. Well, let's not make it required because that'll drive us crazy. And let's say max length. Right? It could be area code 1219. So that's 3. 777. That's 6. And then plus 4. Right? So 12. Right? But then we also maybe want to have the dashes. So 1, 2, 3. So 15. We can do 15 in here. Let's see what happens. Well, let's add a line break. Okay, so 219777. Oop. 1000. Right? No, that is still. Let's make this not required. Okay, that's valid, technically. Okay, and it worked. But if we wanted to type in some gibberish, like 219, right? This is going to let us do this because we have less than 15 characters because it kind of is expecting we're going to come in here and put like 1, right, some kind of area code. Oh, but even there, right? Like we got this 3, right? Because the correct international format is +1, right? So that's still good. But if we submit it, it works. But what we can do here right now that we've got this max length, we would maybe want to come in here and put in that phone number pattern that we've been playing with, right? And we would say something like, /D plus 3, maybe dash /D 3 /D 4. Right, so that was the first one we were playing with, and we know that there's a better one, right? So if we did 219 777 0000, this works. Okay, but if I type in, this is an invalid phone number, doesn't match that format. So we would probably want to combine this with some JavaScript, right? So what JavaScript event do we think is important when we leave, right? So before we submit, right? This validation, this HTML validation is happening when we just try to submit the form. But if we wanted to maybe even prompt them as soon as we're done, what event could we use here that would let us check that as soon as they've added something in here, right? We know this is invalid, right? Even if it had the right dashes, right? This has 5 digits at the end. That's not right. Does anyone remember one of the input events that we looked at yesterday?
A key press.
Key press, that's a good one. So key press is going to operate every time we punch in a letter, right? So phone, it's called phone, right? So let's just add one real quick and see what happens. Document.get element by ID phone. Oh, we need to put this in our special function, right? Because this doesn't exist yet. So we're going to wait till DOM content loads before we add this event listener. So we'll do add event listener key press, and let's do function event, and let's just do console.log event.target.value. Right. So as we're typing, we pull up our console here. Let's type in 219.777.0.0.0.0. Right. It's showing us, but you'll notice that the last thing it logged was 0.0.0 because I typed another one. Right. It's getting the key press is happening before the value is stored.
I was thinking like the enter key.
Oh, okay. Oh, so if I hit enter, that's going to do the submission, right? So if I had an invalid phone number using that pattern, right? Enter, let's see, does enter work? Yep. Okay. But I think there's probably a better event we could attach to. Anyone have another guess? We could
Change?
probably write it that way. Yeah. What did you say, Estrella?
The on change.
Yeah,
Or
perfect.
just change.
That's the one I would do, I think, right? So I would do change. And so when the value changes, we're going to get the value one time, and it's not going to do it on every key press, right? Like we have it right now. So let's save this and see what happens, right? So, okay, the value has changed. We probably want to, in here, use one of our regular expressions. So we might want to do, let's get that cool one, right? So let's check in. JavaScript, phone number, regular expression. Let's get this one. Yeah. Where are we at? Yep. So I'll do, yep, good. And we'll say var validation 3 equals, okay, cool. And then I might come in here and say if, let's get the value, right? Var phone val equals event.target.value. And then I'll say if phone, let's log them both. Maybe we'll test it live first. So let's just copy this in here. Let's see what we're going to get. So let's do var val equals document.get element by ID phone dot value. Right, so we know it has this right now. We'll do maybe val dot test validation read. Oh no, we need to do validation read dot test val false. So that doesn't match. Let's do which is correct, right? Like that's not a valid phone number. So it being false is exactly what we think. Let's test a different one. Right, let's do like 219.777.0.0.0. Right? That's true. Let's try like 1. Okay, so we're missing international prefixes, which is interesting. We're close with this, right? So that's also valid. That's also valid. Let's add another. That's also valid, which is interesting. That shouldn't be valid, right? Or it assumes that like the country code is 2, and our area code is 197.770. Now let's put in another. Okay, so this one is kind of all over the place. Okay, it does eventually stop us if we cross the actual phone number threshold. How many country codes are there? I wouldn't know the answer to that, but this is close enough, right? I would feel pretty good deploying this. It's let's see if this value. See, that's still showing up as true, and that to me that should be false, right? So this is a pretty bad regular expression. So this guy has terrible examples. Oh, okay, but it also checks for, like we did, like in this format. Right, so this regular expression is pretty cool in that it gives us a couple different like format options, but it's kind of missing. Like, let's see if we can improve this, right? Right. So, oh, okay. So, it says it's looking for 4 or 6. Maybe there are 6-digit phone numbers. I don't know. I don't know international. So maybe this is correct, and we just are so used to our American phone numbers because we are country code 1, right? Cool. All right. So I would, if I was testing this for validity, I'd say, all right, that's probably a good validation. And maybe what we want to do is, in our code here, right, now that we know how to do this, we'll say like if validate read.test phone val. Right, so if this is true, we're good. Good phone number. Else, bad phone number. And maybe what we do is we just say event.target.background color equals red. Event.target.background color equals green. Right? We're probably going to want to do something better than this, but this will work for demonstration purposes. Right, so if I type in 219.777.0.0.0.0. Okay, it did not work. Why didn't it work? Let's debug both of these things, right? Console.log phone val. Oh, did we save our? Yeah. Let's try this. 219.777. So it's logging, and let's say console.log good, console.log bad, just so we can see where we're at in this structure. Okay, bad, good, 219.777.16.0.0. Right, it says it's good. I don't know why it's not setting the background color. Oh, does anyone know why it's not setting the background color? Who can spot my flaw here? Any guesses?
Do you need to do target.style?
Exactly. I forgot. All the CSS styles are inside of this style object, and I just really quickly while typing did not put in the stuff. Right, so I type in a bunch of stuff. It's red. Great. I do 219. Great. Now it's green. Right. We've done some real-time validation. We still have that pattern on the element, right? So it's still going to require. We probably want to copy this and use the same thing in both places, right? So maybe we do this. Here to here. And we put this in here just to make sure that we, if we set it's valid in one place, we want to use the same regular expression in both. So this would still prevent us. Let's type in some gibberish, right? Now we're going to get that thing when we try to submit as well, but in real time, right? We've got some kind of validation, and now it would let us submit because both places are the same. Okay. Another cool thing that you can do, I don't think we've ever mentioned this yet. All right, so we're in our JavaScript. Event.target.focus. Is that an option? Yeah, focus. So this is an interesting function, and I'm pretty sure this will work. So let's say, we want to do it when it's bad only. So use this pattern sparingly. Use this method sparingly because it has nasty side effects, and we'll talk about those in a second from a user perspective. So I type in some stuff. The value when it changes, right? When the value changes, I don't know if you can see this. Watch my little cursor. I'm going to click on this element, find. The focus function will put your cursor in that element as if you were as if you had focused on it, right? It's also going to call the onFocus event. So this is a lot of websites will do something like this, which is, if you have tried to put in a bad value and you go to the next thing, it's going to not let you proceed on the form. It's going to put you right back in where it's at. Like I can still go over here, right? Because we're only calling that focus method on the change, right? On the change event. So as long as I don't change this value, I can go to any element I want. But as soon as I change this to a new value, let's change it to like that, right? This is still an invalid phone number. So if I try to go to the find option, I'm not. It doesn't actually let me navigate to the next element. So, but it is a cool way to kind of force people into doing the right thing. So now it's good. Now it lets me move on. You can use that sparingly. You can also, this is also a way that you can call all those events, right? So we could also do event.target.blur, right? This isn't going to actually do anything for us because we don't have a blur event set, but if we had one, right, we could do, let's just grab one, blur. Somebody function, yep. And what we can do is we can say like console.log blur was called, right? So if we're inside here, right, blur is going to be called. What is blur? Is the opposite of focus. It's so whenever I leave this input, right? So I'm here, I go here. Blur, you can see blur was called is printed here, but we can also, if we put in a good number, 777-0000, right? Blur was called. Let's change this to like. Let's change it to like an invalid number, like SS. Okay. So we can call some of the events and have them happen when we want them to. But the main one you probably will want to use or be aware of is focus, which will intentionally move your cursor into an input. Okay. And call that event. All right. Does everyone feel pretty comfortable about HTML input validation? Right. There's a couple approaches to this. We have all these attributes: max length, min length. We can set a pattern, which is going to use those regular expressions if we wanted to just allow digits in here, right? If you wanted to put an age value, for example, you might just say like your age can't be the letter A. All you can put in there is a digit or any number of digits, right? So it'd be like /D+. Okay. But maybe you want to put a digit range, which is like nobody is over 150 yet, right? Science isn't that good, so you could you can combine the pattern equals /D+ with max length of 3, right? So you can't go over a certain amount, right? Cool. Any questions about this? We feel pretty strong about we know how to, right? So any of these pattern max length, this is going to only be checked when.
When you submit.
Yep. And we probably want to combine this with JavaScript events like on change to check it real time for ease of use. But the good thing about this is that right, we've got our phone number checker. Check this out. 219-777-000, right? That part is good, right? That's green. If I came here with a browser that didn't have JavaScript on, 767 000, right? Some kind of valid phone number. You notice that our JavaScript client-side validation didn't work, and neither does our. Oh, I should put in something fake, right? But the HTML version is still going to prevent it from being submitted. Now, as we were discussing, you still, when we start learning back-end server-side programming, you're still going to want to check check and verify everything, right? Because any person has access to this input. They can come in here and say, where's our form here? Right. Which one is it? They can come in here and change this pattern and still submit garbage to you if they wanted to do so. Right? So they can still send you nonsense data. So you're gonna write it on the front end in JavaScript to check, to be nice. You're gonna have it in a pattern in here to prevent the form from being submitted, and you're gonna verify it on the back end of the server. And you're probably gonna want to use the exact same value. Like if you write a regular expression on one place, you're gonna want to use it in all 3 locations. Got it? Cool. All right. Let's play with some other fun stuff. Advanced array methods, right? These are all super cool. We kind of looked at a few of these when we were learning about arrays, but there is a lot of cool power that you can have here with some of these things, right? So let's take a look at, let's go back to the console, get out of here. Let's make an array of numbers, right? So we'll say like 1, 2, 3, 5, 100, 200, 2,000. All right, cool. Let's look at this one first. So the first function we want to look at is rsort. Okay, you'll notice that this is going to be operating on the array in place, right? It has actually changed our array, right? It used to be 1, 2, 3, 5, 100, 2,000. Now R has 1, 100, 2, 2,000, 3, and 5. So sort by default does something really wild, and that is it changes everything to a string, and it assumes you're comparing strings, right? So this works great on if we had a var str r, right? If I had A, B, kangaroo, banana, lizard, right? Str r dot sort. Right? This works great. A, B, banana, kangaroo, lizard. Right? Perfectly in alphabetical order. But with numbers, it does this bizarre behavior where it says 1 is a string, 100 is a string, 2 is a string, 2,000 is a string, and it's sorting them alphabetically, even though it didn't change the data type here, right? These are still numbers, but it sorted them as if they were strings. So what sort also takes, and this is why we wanted to learn about functions and stuff before we really focused on this, is that sort takes a function as its argument, right? And so we can come in here and we can write a function. We'll say function sorter, and we're going to put in 2 elements, right? So we'll do like A and B, and then we can return greater than or less than or whatever we wanted, right? So in the case of our numbers, if we wanted to sort it from smallest to largest, we can do return A is less than B, right? So we got a function now, sorter, and if we do 1, 2, right, it's going to say true. If we do 2, 1, false, right? But if we pass sorter to our array, it's going to look at each individual element in that array and compare 2 of those values. So if we do, what was it, R, right? It's got this weird format now because we ran it with sort originally. If we do r.sort and we put in sorter, might have converted them to array numbers already. So let's just change a few of these in here. Let's say 15, 32. Did we use this wrong? Yeah, we probably did. JavaScript sort. Array sort. First element, second element. Oh, we have to, yeah, we don't return true or false in JavaScript. We return -1, 1, or 0, right? Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So in our code, we wrote this a little bit wrong. Let's find our, okay, so if A is less than B, return -1. Else, if B is A is greater than B, return 1. Else, they're the same, right? If it's not less than B and it's not greater than B, then it's got to be equal. So we'll do return 0. Right, this should work, right? Okay, so that's our sort function now. So let's try, yeah, perfect. So this has sorted them, right? So before I thought it was true or false, right? That's a different programming language because a lot of them have this type of function. But in JavaScript, we're gonna, if the first number is smaller, we want to return -1. So it tells it, hey, you're gonna move this to the left. And if it's greater, it's gonna say, hey, move this to the right. And if they're the same, it says, perfect, we're good. So those are the 3 things that you're gonna do in an array sort. We could reverse this just by changing our function, right? So we have this sorter function. Let's make, rev sorter. And all we'd have to do is just flip these around, right? So 1, -1, 0, good. And so now we can do r dot sort rev sorter. Okay? And now it goes from biggest to smallest. You guys follow along? Sort. Would you ever sort by other things, right? So let's try an array that's got a bunch of stuff mixed into it, right? So let's say we've got this array, and it also has the word Eric and Drew, and then it's got like a 36, right? So if I do r sort with our sorter function, it kind of works up until when it gets to a string, and then it goes crazy. So what you might want to do is you might want to loop through them and remove it, or we could use a filter function, perhaps. Right? And so let's look at array filters now. So r.filter is a function, and it takes a callback. And so that a callback, whenever you see the word callback, just place that in your head with, this is a function. Okay? And so, how do we use this? Let's look up array filter. Cool? Yeah. Perfect. Alright, cool. So, if we're in here, array filter, and let's make a function first. So we'll say function remove strings, and we'll say element, right? So when we run array filter, it's going to call this function on each and every element in the array. So if we return true here, it's going to include it in the array, and if we return false, it's not. So we can do return type of L equals number. Right. Let's just make sure this code works. So let's do type of 2 equals number. Right. So we need to have this be a string. Number. Okay. So we've got this function. If I put in function, if I call it, right, if I do remove strings with Eric, it's going to return false. If I put in remove strings 1, it's going to return true. So now I can do R, which has a bunch of strings in it. I can do R filter remove strings. And now we have an array that has numbers. So we could combine this, and we, array has been changed, right? Okay, it doesn't. It removes it. Perfect. So what we can do is we can do array filter like this. We can do R. Let's do R equals that. Okay, now we can do R dot sorter. Okay, and now we've got our numbers sorted. So filter, if you return true, it includes that element. So whatever you want to check in here is a conditional. We'll do it. Right? So let's write another filter function. Right. So we got function. Let's remove large numbers. And we do EL. Right. So this can be any name. So it can be, we can put num in here. This is our variable. This is our argument. And what we'll do here is we'll say if num is greater than No, maybe we want to say like the top number is like 100. Okay. Return false. Okay. And then we can do return true, right? If it's less than 100, we're going to return true. Oh no. Dang it. Function remove large numbers. Num. If num greater than 100, return false, and then return true. Alright, so if the number is greater than 100, it's going to leave this function with false. Otherwise, any other case, it's going to be less than 100. It's going to return true. Alright, so we've got our R here, which has 100 and 2000. But if we do r.filter, remove large numbers, now we have an array, or at least it has returned an array that that has that number removed. Right? We could do the same thing in reverse. We could like remove small numbers. If we made a small numbers function, let's make that real quick. Remove small numbers. No, if number is less than 100, or let's do less than 30, 35. Okay. So if I do r.filter, remove small numbers, right, we get just the top ones, 36, 100, 2000. Okay. Bear in mind, and keep this in mind here, is that filter does not change our array. Filter returns a new array. So if you wanted to store this, you'd have to do r equals r.filter, remove small numbers. Okay. Whereas if we let's get our array back here, right? So r.filter, remove strings to get our strings out of here. Great, we've got an array. R.sort, however, sorter does change the array. Wait, what? Oh, I forgot to r equals r.filter. So r now has no strings in it. R.sorter, right? R.sort has modified our existing array, and it returns. It doesn't return anything, actually. Let's verify that. So we've got r.sort rev sorter. Let's assign this to so var. What does this do? Equals. So what does this do? Oh, is an array as well, but R is also sorted. So that's interesting. This lets us probably, so we can chain stuff together. So we could do, how can we do this? R dots, let's try this as an experiment. So one of the cool things about JavaScript is that, you know, you've seen us do things like document.getElement.byId, dot value, or .innerHTML, replace, right? So that we can change a string from an object, from a property of that. So oftentimes when we're calling these array functions, the reason it's returning the array is because you want to be able to chain that to a next command. So we might do r.sort, let's do r.filter, remove strings, dot sort, sorter. And so now we can see that, let's do this, var new r equals, right? So if we look at new r now, it is that array that we've removed the strings from and sorted into the correct numerical order, right? And we could do this any number of times. So we could do dot sort rev sorter dot, all right? So new r now has it backwards, but we could chain this forever and ever. Sorter, right? So we could do any number of things kind of on down the chain. Everyone tracking? Okay. R.find. If we put in, we know our array has 2000, let's say 100 in here. Oh, it's got to be a function. So we could do el return el equals 100. Right? how would I show this off in an interesting way? Let's see if W3 Schools has some good simple examples. Where's our search thing here? Oh, we have JavaScript turned off. Nice. Array.find. Perfect. Yeah. So when you've got an array of numbers or strings or whatever, like this could say Eric, Andrew, right? It's going to return a single result that matches this criteria, whatever is true or false in here. So we could say, let's just change this to element so that it doesn't make sense, or so that it makes sense to us. So we say element equals Eric, right? So the very first time it finds this, it's going to return that value. Okay, so if you're going to search for an array and you're going to look for an instance of a thing, this is a quicker .find is quicker than doing it the other way, which would be, for var I equals 0, I plus plus, I is less than ages dot length, I plus plus, right? If if ages I equals Eric, right? This is kind of what we were doing the other day when we were looking through arrays for things. Ages, or the array.find is going to be quicker for us than writing out 7 lines of code to do this type of thing and bringing loops into the equation. It's still behind the scenes looping, but we're going to let JavaScript, the language, do this behind the scenes on our behalf. Okay? So it will take a function, and the way we do this is just like sort, just like filter. This is going to operate. It passes in the single whatever current value it is. So it's just going to start at 0, and then it's going to go to 1, and it's going to go to 2. So it'll go 3, 10, 18, 20, Eric, Andrew, and you're going to just return as soon as it finds a true, whenever this becomes a true statement, it returns that value and stops. Okay. Everyone following? All right. Map. Map is a super fun one. All right, so let's just say, right, so let's clear out here. Right? So let's use their example, because their example is a pretty good one, right? So we could say ages, right? And I've got a whole bunch of people, right? 37. Maybe we got, we got a kid that's like 12, a kid that's 13. We got like a cat that's 1, right? Ages. Okay, so map is a function that takes a function and does something to each element in this array, right? So if we call a function, we'll say mapper test, right? We do el, and we do age, right? Here, we'll do return age plus 1, or age times 2. Oh, got to put in our thing. Wait, what? Oh, plus times 2, that doesn't make any sense. Age times 2. Right, so if we do ages.map, mapper test, right, it has gone through and multiplied every age by 2. Okay, this is really, really useful if you're doing any kind of video game development, if you wanted to if you had a whole bunch of arrays and you wanted to perform the same activity on each and every element, right? The other way to do this would be to write in a for var I equals whatever, right? The whole for loop, and then multiplying it and then storing that value back. Or we can just write a simple thing that says, that is map, right? So we say ages.map. We can do it again, mapper test. Right? So we could always do ages equals ages.map, mapper test. And we can just do this again, right? Now we're constantly doubling all of those ages just by running one function. We haven't had to bring any loops into this. This is extremely useful in environments where maybe you're doing math a lot, right? So if you've got a big array of recipes, right? Recipes would be a great example, right? It's going to give you a default list of var ingredients, right? And it'll be like salt, like 1, maybe it's in tablespoons. So we'll just say salt is 2 tablespoons. Let's make it in right. So it'd be like 2 tablespoons of salt. 5 gallons of milk, 5 cups of milk. Right. Any number of ingredients. Right. And then you want to just say like I need to make this for 2 people. Right. So you could do like ages or ingredients dot map macro test, right? Which is now has doubled our recipe, right? We haven't had to do anything special. We've got a whole bunch of values, and we're going to double each of those ingredients. Okay, because we probably if we were storing this really right, we're going to write our ingredients in a nice way, so we'll have it as like salt, 2 tablespoons, butter, 4 ounces, and then we'll say like milk, 4 ounces, right? So this is most of the time our ingredients are going to be in some kind of element like this that is as an object, right? But we know that we can get this as an array, so we can say like var ingredient amounts equals ingredients dot keys, right? Or what was it? It's get keys or get values of object JavaScript. Oh, object at values. Yeah. So we could do object dot values ingredients. Right? So ingredient amounts is now an array that has those objects, right? So we could have even gone through here. We can go to map directly. So we could say map, and we'll assume mapper test. This function would want to call it something like double the ingredients. So now ingredient amounts equals 488, right? We doubled all the ingredients, and then you would just add those back into the your nicely formatted object, right? Because you can imagine we'd have like an HTML input up here, or a table or a list of ingredients, and be like 2 ounces here. If you're just wrapping, here let's show a concrete example of this, right? So we might have UL, right? Li salt, and then we might do a span ID equals salt 2 span ounces, or what did we say, tablespoons? Okay. Let's just copy this. Then we had butter, milk, butter, milk. Let's make this 4, and let's make this 8, I guess. So we'll say 4 ounces, 8 cups. I don't know what this seems like a pretty gross recipe. Don't make this at home. I guarantee it won't turn out good. Yeah, so we've got our LI here somewhere. Where did it go? Why is it not here? Under our text area? It's right in here. Did we hide our LIs or something? Let's move this up. Let's put it out here. Oh, because we are not live? Why are we not live? There we go. I guess our little server crashed or something, right? So we've got 2, 4, and 8, and they're inside of a span element, right? So we might go through here and salt, butter. So we might even come here and say class equals ingredients. Right, so we've got our ingredients here, and they have a class of ingredients. So we might come through here, and our code would look something like this. Document.get elements by class name, ingredients, And we might do dot for each. Is that? No. Okay, so we'll do function. Let's turn it into an array. But we could, you know, if we had that data object, which is like ingredients, and it says like 2, 4, 8. Then when we do that doubler, maybe we had one of these inputs that was like, or maybe it's a button that just you click it up and down. It's going to run on each and every one of those values automatically, and you know, then we would update this with inner HTML. Can you kind of see the value of that type of operation, so you don't have to have loops everywhere? Cool. It's hard to come up with like real world examples for some of this stuff, so please stop me if I'm making it worse. All right. What else is good? We looked about filter. We looked at map, find, sort, reduce. How would we use reduce in a good example? They probably have a good one. Yep. All right. So this is taking every value that's in this array and subtracting it from itself. So it's going to keep a running total. So that if this had, you know, 55, 75, 64, right? Now we're at negative 19. And you see, map is going to do something on each element by itself and give us the array back. Reduce is a way we can say, hey, take every value in this array and do something with it. But it's only going to do whatever we tell it to do in our function, right? So we could have done plus here. And this is going to add every number together. The value that this returns, right? Reduce is a single entity, right? So we could try something like greater than right? That's going to give us a false. This is going to give us a true, right? Because it takes two arguments, which is the total that it has so far, and then the current element. So it's going to go element by element in this array and do something with it, right? This is really good for math operations like that, where you're just like, I have a whole bunch of values in here, let's count them all up, right? A good example would be, in this example, if we wanted to get the total, or if we wanted to figure out the average, we could do numbers.reduce my func and then divided by numbers.length, right? So this is going to give us our average right off the bat, which is, it's going to add all of these together and give us this 73.8 is our average. So you can do math really quickly using reduce and a single function. The other way to do this would be the slow way, which would be like for I equals 0, I is less than numbers.length, I plus plus. And we do like total, or running total equals running total plus numbers I. We'd have to make var running total equals 0. And then we would probably want to do, we would need to output it as well. So, are you saving a ton of lines of code this way? Perhaps. But either way, this is a lot simpler and cleaner to read. You can have all the math in one spot rather than intentionally looping. And we might even want to test this with timing, right? Because one of these may be radically faster than the other. I'm not sure. But we know that we have a console.time function, right? If we wanted to make an array with 10,000 values in it and just see which one ran faster. Cool. Any questions on any of this? Those are some of the array functions, and all the ones that we covered tonight, sort, find, map, reduce, and filter, all take functions as their argument. And they're going to operate that function on each and every element. Sort is going to look at the element to the left and right and say, do I need to move this element? Find is going to look for an element, and as soon as it finds it, it's going to say, yep, here it is. Map is going to operate on each individual element. So if you did item times 2, it's going to multiply them. Reduce is going to operate on all the elements together and give you a running total, or let you do math. So if you need to find averages and stuff. And then filter lets us remove elements that we do not want, that match some criteria. But they all take functions. Any questions? None? Alright. It is 8:10. Tomorrow we're going to cover timers that let us do things on a like kind of a repeatable pattern. Those also take functions as their main argument and then take some kind of time. But we're going to play with how that works in the context of like what you're going to use it for, having events happen at set durations. Then we're going to look at JavaScript object notation because that's really one of the primary ways when we start learning about APIs and doing back-end programming. You're almost always going to be using JSON, JavaScript object notation, to pass data back and forth. But it also is going to tie into the other thing that we're going to look at tomorrow, which is storing data inside the user's browser. So, we could store a limited amount of information here. Like if I put in my name, every time I come to the page, you can use JavaScript to know my name. So we have some limited data storage capabilities, and we're going to look at that tomorrow. But really, tomorrow is going to be a bit, like we've covered so much crazy stuff this week. Tomorrow is going to be light on purpose so that we can spend more time reviewing all the stuff that we've done and maybe even playing with some more examples. Tomorrow we also have a treat in that our class instructor is a coworker of mine. We've been working together for 10 years. He is the CTO at my current company, and he's going to join you and talk about how to have a thriving career over 20 plus years. How do you continually evolve and learn? How do you avoid burnout? How do you work well on a team? Some of the like social cues of like what kind of arguments should you get in with your teammates, right? Those are always super fun. So tomorrow's gonna be a good day for us, I think, and then next week we'll start diving into even more JavaScript. Any questions? Anything you want to go over? Anything you want to build? Anything that doesn't make sense? We've covered a lot this week, especially on the browser side. To me, the one that's maybe the hardest to grasp is like all the different events and how to use them.
Yeah, if we just messed around with events a little more,
Okay.
that wouldn't be horrible.
So, any other votes for events or any other votes for things you also would like me to look at for the next like 30, 40 minutes? Or is everybody like, yep, let's dive into events. All right. Events. What inside... Oh, get out of here. I don't care. What specifically in events would we want to take a look at? Which... what's the first thing in an event you'd want to take a look at? And we'll just dive in and examine it. Maybe input methods or how we attach them. Maybe the event object itself. How do you want to start this, Andrew?
Kind of everything you just said. The event object, and then also attaching them to inputs.
Let's make ourselves a brand new thingamabob, and that is a formal name. All right, so we're gonna do a new folder, and we'll just say JS events. Right. Great. Perfect. I don't want to get a new version of Video Studio Code. Stop it. All right, so I'm gonna make a folder, JS, make a file, index.html, and I'm gonna make a JavaScript file. New file, let's call it events, events.js. All right. Give ourselves a little bit of boilerplate. Let's load in our JavaScript. We'll say script source equals JS events.js. Okay. All right, we're all in agreement. Okay. Let's attach something to the body, right? And then we can just kind of evaluate what's happening. ID equals whatever main page. All right. So in main page, we know that we have a in JavaScript, because we're loading this in the head, what do we need to do with the event to make sure that the element that we want to attach an event to exists? We have a couple different ways to do it. One is we know it's defer. We could put defer in here. But there's another way that we learned yesterday, which I like better because it keeps everything more JavaScripty.
Either the window.onload or the window. I forget the name. The DOM
content loaded. Yeah.
DOM content. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we could have done this any number of ways. Document dot add event listener, and say load function, and say alert. It's loaded. It is loaded. Right. So we can just verify that this. Let's go live, huh? Go live. Okay, so that didn't work. So, because it's on window, right? Window. Yeah. So window has the load event. It also has DOM content loaded. Right? I like that one a little bit better because it's like, I'm not going to wait for all the images and stuff. I'm just going to load. Okay? Whenever just the HTML itself is available. Alright. So, we want to add an event. Adding an event is you're going to do it on the element itself, usually. You're going to pick an element. It doesn't matter what element you pick. Every element can have events attached to it. So we're going to do the body, right, because that's our only element right now. So we'll do document.getElement by ID. What did we call it? Main. Oh gosh, main page, right? Main page. And we're going to do that add event listener. Okay, listener takes a event type. Now we learned there's key up, change, key down, key press, all these different event types. Which one would we like to look at first? Maybe just let's start with click. Okay, and then the second argument. If you think of this as there's two arguments here. The second argument is a function. What argument does this function get?
Event.
Event. Yeah, it gets an event object, right? And it doesn't matter what you call it. You know, in this little example, it says EV, right? You can call it EV. You can call it E. You can call it Andrew's fun event. It is just an object, and so whatever we put in here is what we're going to use inside this function to reference it. So, right, we can just do here. Let's do this. Console.
So.
Yep.
So since you're using it within the scope of that, if you use the same word event in other events, it's not going to mess anything up?
Nope. It is
okay.
Only, so this function only exists inside the browser at the time of a click happening, and then the function goes away. Like the function itself still exists, right? It's still inside the page, right? Inside the browser, but it is inside the scope of this of the document getElement by ID main page. It attaches this function to that, and it says, hey, anytime there's a click, let me know about it. And every time we click something, it's going to call this function. If I use the word event up here, and I can say var event equals silly, right? Okay. Yep. So I'm going to click here, and if I pull up my thing, right? Click, click, click. Why? ID main page. Function. You see console.log. Am I here? Why are we not getting our? I don't know why it's not showing up this weird. Maybe let's put something in here so that our page has more content. So let's say h1 fun div is some div. Right. We got some content. Okay. So because the body had no content in it, it was 0 pixels high and 0 pixels tall, right? So as soon as we put some content in here, now the body is this full page, right? And you can kind of see, here, let's do this. I'll show this off really easily. So style, I do body, background, color. Let's make this like medium blue. So the whole page is blue, but you'll notice that like until I'm inside some content, so let's try, maybe this will show this off better. Border, 2px solid, red. Let's make this medium C green. Right. The body, even though the entire background is green, the browser's smart enough to know that I really want this. The actual body itself that is clickable is in here, inside this red box. So anytime I'm in here, it's going to click. We probably would want to come through here and be like height, auto, or let's do 100 view height, width, 100 view width, right? And I can see, wow. Then we probably want to do margin, 0, padding, 0, right? All that normal CSS stuff that we're setting up, right? Now, anywhere in here I click is going to do that click event. So we were talking about what does the event object have, right? Depending on what event is happening, there's going to be different stuff in here. You can see that this says mouse event. So we've been calling this just a nebulous, you're going to get an event object. Because that's really what it is. Like, it is going to have specific information because they're all events. But mouse event is going to have information about where your mouse is on the page. Client X and client Y, right? And so if I click in a different one, right? So we can, let's do console.log event.client X, console.log event.client Y, right? Every time I click this, now we're getting different locations on the page in coordinates. So that is one of the things that is in the event. We can also tell if I did this event and other things were also pressed down at the same time, right? So it's got control key false. This is normally something you'd want to do with, so I'm going to hold down my control key and we'll just see what happens, right? So now this mouse event fired and control key was true. So you can use this event to like chain behaviors together. If you wanted to make a drawing app, for example, and you wanted to have it so that like when you hold your mouse down, it starts drawing a line, but if you hold control, maybe it makes your paintbrush bigger. Would be one thing you could do with this. So the event object has a whole bunch of information in here that are going to be useful to you depending on what it is you're trying to do. And I can't tell you what it is you're going to try to do because it's going to be different pretty frequently. We can come up with like good scenarios, but the best thing you can do here is whatever event you want to look at, always just write an event listener and log the event so you can look at it. Right? So if we had a button in here, like let's take this border out, right? And let's put in a button. Say button ID equals some button. Right? So we got a button. I click it. The mouse event now is going to have the target, which is the one we've been looking at when we're saying, what did I actually click on this page, right? So like if I'm clicking over here, event.target, let's just log it so it's easier. So I can see this. So let's take this out. We'll do console.log event.target. Right? So now, I click this H1, it's going to log the H1. Click the button, it's going to log the button. If I click just the body, it's going to log the body. If I click, yeah, there's a div in here somewhere, right? We found it. You can log the div. So I would urge you and encourage you that whenever you start writing an event handler, the very first thing you should console.log out is the event object itself. So you can just go in here and look and be like, what in here do I need that's useful? And most of the time it's going to be things like target. You might want you might want the control key to figure out if that's pressed, because those are some of the things you do.
So can you chain after you find the target you want? You can chain, like if you just wanted the target button, if you just want the target to be that button, so only when you click that button the event happens.
Yeah. So right here, so the event is always going to happen. Right? Every time I click on the main page, the event will fire. But if we only wanted something to happen when we were clicking the button, we can come in here and say if event.target, let's just get the attribute, get attribute ID equals, what do we call our stupid button? Some button. Then we log these things. Otherwise, we just ignore it completely. Right? So That would be one way I would do it. And I did this yesterday, and I do this all the time. So now I click anywhere on this page, nothing happens. I click the button runs. Okay. We can also, right? So we're attaching this to the main page. We can attach this to some button, right? So if we attach it to some button, this is still going to be true because the event target will be some button, right? It's still the same, but now the event is just on this single element. So what I will often do, like when we were playing paper, rock, scissors the other day, I had 3 buttons, and I want it to fire on all 3. Rather than put it on all 3, I'm going to put it on the parent, and then when it's, if the class was game option or whatever, like we did yesterday, then I'm going to run my game. Tracking? What else would you like to look at in terms of events? We can also, right, we know that we can do this to get element by ID, like any element that exists in here, but we also know that we have document.body, right? That is a, so anything we can type in our console, document.body, right, is a link to that element. We could also do document itself, right? So that would be anywhere in here. So let's see if we can do a click event handler on document. Yeah. So if you want to just make a global event handler for a click, you just put it on the document. Document.add event listener, click. That's even more reliable because what if we, what if we don't have a body tag in here? Like junk. Put a junk element. All right, now there's no, let's see if document.body. Yeah, so it has created one for us. And then it put that fake tag that we had in there. This is like, never rely on behavior like this because it is random and unpredictable. So this said, hey, you didn't have a body. A body tag is required for HTML. You have some tags, so it created a brand new tag for us, ASDF, and then put that stuff in here. So now we have document.body. But if we look at like the inner HTML here, right? It's putting that information, like all the stuff that would normally be in our body. Like this ASDF tag was our body tag before, and we just got a brand new fake body tag created by the browser because it's trying to be nice to us. Browsers are weird. They allow a lot of garbage. What else? So maybe this is even cleaner, right? Like maybe we should have done this on our paper, rock, scissors game. We should have said the click event is going to be on the document itself, because I think we put it in like game controls or something, right? But if we're looking to see if the ID or the class matches, then there could just be a global click handler, and we just say, hey, capture every click.
So just for example, when you did the event dot, you're getting the location of the mouse. Mm-hmm. What if you wanted to take that data and push it to like an array or?
Yeah, let's look at that. That's a great example, right? So let's put in here and say like h2 x span ID equals x. Right, x span, and then we'll do y span ID equals y slash span. So right now, by default, right, I'm going to have this h2 element, and it says xy. Let's give ourselves some margin padding over here so that we get this nice. Let's see if I can take this out. That's too much. Let's do 20. we got x, y. I want to put the value of where my mouse is here. So one of the events we could do is document dot add event listener mouse move. Right, so every time the mouse moves, I'm gonna get it. Right, so I'm gonna do function event, and I know what the answer is, but what I would encourage you to do is I'm gonna come in here and say console.log event, right? Because we know that we have an XY coordinate in there, but there's a few in there actually, right? So now we have all these mouse events. Let me just open one up. We can say client X and client Y is probably the right one. There's also a layer X and a layer Y. It looks like those are the same. And then there's an offset X and an offset Y. Those are interesting. And there's a page X and a page Y. They all have slightly different numbers. And then there's a screen X and a screen Y. Why do you think my screen X says negative 1783? Any ideas or any guesses? That's a pretty big value. Any guess? I have two monitors, and I'm using it in Windows mode where it stretches both across. My primary monitor is the one that I'm looking at right now, but our code is over here on my second monitor. I am apparently 1700 pixels offset from my main monitor. Negative 17. So screen X and screen Y is really interesting because this is telling me, like, if I made this browser full screen, maybe I'm like, this is my location on my desktop on the entire monitor itself. But I think the ones we probably want is page X and page Y, and there are like these offset ones. Those are interesting, and we'll talk about those maybe next. But let's just first assume page X and page Y are the ones we want. So we'll just say document.get element by ID x dot inner HTML equals event dot page X, and then we'll do the same thing for Y. Right? Page Y, change that to Y. So now this event exists, and you can see I'm moving around the screen, and you can see if I go to the top left, right, 0, 0, all the way down to, in this case, 1376, and as soon as I move off of the body of the page, it stops recording. Right? There's no extra mouse events. Okay, but as soon as I'm back in, look at that. All those mouse events are firing. And you can see it's showing you where you are on my screen. Right? So all the way over here is like 1800. Right? And if I go all the way to the right where my main monitor starts, right, that goes to pretty much 0. And if I was to drag my browser across multiple pages, you can't see it, but on my end, now it goes the full direction, right? So this is 0 for me, screen X. It goes all the way to 1800 and all the way to negative 2000, right? You kind of see how that works if you're watching down here inside this little box. Does that answer your question? That's a pretty good example, right? We can capture if we were going to build a drawing app, or we wanted to say like something like that, we could theoretically paint on here, right? How would we paint here in let's see. Here's a good one. Right, so we can do pretty sure this will like break things if I try to do it, so I'm not going to even suggest it. But there is an element that we haven't looked at all called a canvas. Right, so canvas ID equals canvas. And what canvas lets us do is do art on here, right? So it's been like a decade since I've used a canvas for anything, so let's look up how to use it. Draw, put pixel on canvas. JavaScript. Oh gosh. This is too difficult to show off without spending a bunch of time. Put image data. Yeah, this is a terrible idea. But there is a canvas element, and what you will do with the canvas element is that you would take these mouse coordinates and you maybe would just draw a line wherever that, wherever your X and Y coordinates are. So you would want to be able to capture them on mouse move. But you'd also maybe want to capture them. We've kind of used it as an example a few times. Maybe we only paint when we're moving and our mouse is clicked at the same time, right? Because here, let's go. Let's go here, right? This event has a right. Oh, so here's a simple way we could do this: chaining things together, right? So I can make a variable up here and say like is clicked equals false. And then I can come in here and say document dot add event listener. Oh, wait, I already have a click down here, right? So, well, because we probably need to do mouse down, right? So mouse down, right? That's our click event. So as soon as I'm holding this down, I want to change the value of that function. I don't even care about the event object, so I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to say is clicked equals true. And then I want the same thing, but mouse up, right? So when I've stopped clicking, I want to turn it back to false. False. I'm going to say mouse up. And maybe, just to make sure that we know we're doing this here, let's take out our canvas. We don't need that. Okay, we got X, Y, and then maybe we have and clicked. We'll say span ID equals clicked. Okay. We'll just say no by default. Okay. So our page now says X1 clicked no. Okay. But we're going to come in here. We're going to say is click true, and we'll say document.get element by ID clicked. We'll say inner HTML equals true, or yes. And we'll do the same thing when it's no longer clicked. No. Okay. But now what we want to do, now that we have this clicked variable, right, and this is going to work, right? I'm holding down my mouse button. As soon as I let up, it goes back to no. But what we really want to do is we want to say, hey, we only care about the coordinates being moved when I'm clicked. So I can say if is clicked, and just put everything that we were doing in here, right? So only while I'm clicking, right? As soon as I let up, and it says no, the coordinates stop updating. Cool, huh? We can chain events like this together in JavaScript. We can do stuff when a certain condition is met, right? We don't need to log all these mouse events all the time when we don't care about it, right? So right now nothing is being logged. We are still calling this mouse move function, right? But nothing is happening because we've said, hey, if is clicked is false, which it is going to be most of the time, don't do anything. Skip out of it. Okay? So over here, it's only going to start tracking and doing stuff with our mouse event when we are actually clicking. Okay?
Would it change anything if you declare those variables inside of the primary event listener function?
Yes, absolutely. Right? So let's say is clicked false. So let's declare them in here. Var is clicked true. Var is clicked false. Okay, what's going to happen now is that this is still updating, right? Because we still are saying inner HTML equals yes. But the problem is clicked is not defined. Whenever we use var like this, that's where it's declaring the variable. And as I was mentioning before, like this function is this is the scope of this this variable. It only exists inside this thing. All we would have to do to make this work correctly is clicked equals true, right? So now this is on window. Everything works again. This is still bad syntax, right? I probably would not want to ever use the same variable name in both places. Oh, and you can see, like, check this out, right? So even when I'm not clicked is no. Okay, and that's because let's make this false, right? So the default is this, but you'll notice that even when I'm clicked, these things have created their own version of this in the scope of this function, and it is not paying attention to this one at all. Got it? So each one of these, this is clicked, is looking at the global one, not the ones that are inside of here. Right? So you have to be very careful. If I'm declaring variables that I want to use inside a bunch of different functions, I'm going to declare that at the top of my JavaScript file usually, just like I did here. So I might even come here and put declare our variables. And then I'll have load create my event, listeners, when the page is ready. And then in here like this, so that I know this is clicked is available everywhere. I just want to come in here and say this, right? There is another, right? So we said var is clicked equals true, right? We can intentionally put this somewhere else. We can say window.isClicked, right? That's the same, because remember every variable is really existing under our global window object. But if we just call isClick like this, it assumes that we're talking about the window one. So now it goes back to working. So variable scoping, which we very briefly touched when we brought this up, is kind of complicated. And there are a bunch of rules. But the easiest way to test all this stuff is like, if it doesn't work, right? Figure out why it doesn't work. And you could do mouse down, console.log is clicked. Right, and then we can do check it in both places. Right? So it's saying undefined up there. Even though we know we have is clicked. Is clicked is defined, but as soon as you get in here, it's not actually using. So the problem is it's not actually using this one, right? So watch this. Console.log this. It's saying document, right? So it's saying it's in document, not window. But if we do console.log this, right? When we load the page, this is window in the global scope. And then the problem is if we come down here and we say console.log this, right? It's logging document over and over again. What has really happened is that we didn't need to create this variable at all. Is that the very first time we used it, var is clicked equals true, right? Check this out. It's putting it on document, but it's putting it on the event of that document, even though this is correct, right? So we could do document.isClicked equals true. We should be able to do document.isClicked equals false. We could do document.isClicked. Right? It's going by so fast. Let's get this out of here. Yes, that didn't work. So, so the safest thing to do is just pay attention to where your variables are and experiment, right? Like sometimes you think, hey, I could probably do this, and it doesn't work, right? There's no problem with that. So I would is clicked equals true or false. Okay. And you might even want to be more explicit. You might want to come in here and say window.isClicked. Right, so that we know what object that variable is in, right? Because this is window. But both are correctish. Good question. Anything else? All right, I'm going to stop the recording.